Rick, did you want to fire away? Give us the pretext for your
Sure.
GraphQL question.
Uh, I met with Manchu, is that how you say his name? Yesterday for an hour and a half or so, or an hour and something anyway. And we went through
Awesome.
this whole idea of using static GraphQL files and changing the GLQL to output effectively a JSON variable file, right? That we can apply to this static GraphQL. Which is cool. I mean, the concept's cool. Arguably, we got into a discussion about, does it even make sense to produce GraphQL? Why not just go straight into Elasticsearch or something? If we're gonna take this GL language that we're creating to do these view query things, uh, why go through yet another three more layers? Let's go a little further. And by using Elasticsearch, for example, uh, we get some caching and some, even though there's a delay a little bit, the delay now apparently is down to pretty quick. So in terms of updated data, right, getting into the Elasticsearch engine. Anyway, that's future. Yes, that's the one we've been talking about working on or whatever. So let
Yeah,
me.
so I'll
Oh, go
just
ahead.
give a tiny bit of background. Hopefully, I get this right anyway. But at the moment, we essentially generate a string. So if in your GLQL query you say, "Oh, I want like labels," then it will kind of say, "Oh, well, I need this string here." If you were to say, "I want notes," then it would introduce a similar string. Or if you want assignees or whatever, so it's just basically string concatenation is how it works at the moment. The idea is that this query would be extended to have every possible field available in it, but every single one of them would have some kind of conditional on it. And then those conditionals would actually be what we output or convert our GLQL to, right? To then determine that static GraphQL file, like when it's sent. And the funny thing is, it's the whole thing is sent to the server, if I remember rightly, and it's actually the server that evaluates these conditions.
Well,
But sorry, go on.
yeah, no. You're not. Well, you know as much as me. I'm learning, right? So it's. I mean, my understanding was actually we can probably have the server have the static file, and all we really need to send to it is the variable list, right? So if I let me share,
Interesting.
maybe. I mean, and again,
Cool.
this is. Let me
Do
figure
you
out
need
how
to
to
share
share
your
here for a
screen?
second.
Okay, if I hit
Uh,
stop, that should allow you
yeah,
to
it says a request was sent, whatever that means. Multiple presenters
see.
can share. All right, I'm not going to get too complicated. Let's try. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't show me
Afterward,
what I'm sharing.
I would like to uh, go back a little bit to
Yeah, go
the
on.
Elasticsearch thingy because I would like to know how that would tie with GLQL because Elasticsearch has the downside that not everyone has Elasticsearch,
Yeah, I
but
mean,
we have GraphQL.
it was just a discussion. I mean, honestly, I guess I started it somewhat. Oh yeah, okay. So I got to quit and reopen Zoom because I hadn't tried sharing my screen before. So give me 2 seconds
Yeah, no,
to
no worries at
quit,
all. No
and
worries at
I'll
all.
I'll join
Yeah, of
back in a
course.
second.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah, the elastic thing is interesting actually, and I saw recently. I don't know if you've used like the search on GitLab.com recently, but I was doing something the other day, and it was almost real time updating. I'm going to try it now. Probably knowing my luck, it's not gonna. So if I search here for like static,
So we'll
uh,
try all this again and see if I can. Yeah. So just to continue what you were saying, Marco. Uh, I started off going to like one of the issues we have, or one of the potential issues we have was, we're going through 27 different layers of stuff in terms of, we start up front with this. be in JavaScript or whatever, we come through to this application that we're working on, or I'm working on to convert it to a query that goes to something else, that goes to something else, that goes to something else. So so my initial question for him was, well, why don't we just generate a Postgres query and ask the database, because it's got all the data anyway. I mean, why are we going through 27 different layers? And there was good arguments for some of it. I mean, maybe all of it, including security and access privileges and all the other layers that have been stacked on there. I mean, one of the things we looked at, we ended up with as a alternative potential was Elasticsearch. But yes, to your point, there may be downsides to that. No, we're not doing that yet. That was just part of the, call it, free-ranging discussion that we had in terms of potential. Creating this layer that lets us put different backends on. Okay, so right now we have arguably two backends, one that deals with work items, one that deals with issues, MRs, kind of thing. So call it legacy backend and future or current backend with work items. Right. So what I'm doing becomes another backend, another variation that we're going to put behind a feature flag that says, hey, if you want to play with this new thing, do this. Right. And that's kind of where we ended up yesterday. And that's where we'll end up till we get far enough to prove the concept or to show that it works or doesn't work. And then whether we continue with that, whether performance is even a problem. If performance isn't the problem, then maybe this is the better way to go. Nothing decided. It's more just, well, that's better. Now my screen share thing makes more sense to me when I look at it. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, because before it didn't show me. No, go ahead.
To confirm, so you're saying that essentially you're going to experiment with seeing if you can, rather than generate a GLQL query, somehow query Elastic. Is that the?
No. The Elastic stuff was just a
okay.
a brainstorming thing. It's just
Cool.
If we create a structure that allows us to put in different backends, then maybe in the future, if it's worth it, we'll look at creating a backend that creates an Elasticsearch rather than a GraphQL search.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay.
I mean, and that's not, like I said, it's not really
anything
decided yet.
Well,
let me.
I don't know how Elasticsearch works, but is it similar to creating a GraphQL query and sending it the query and returning the data?
Well, I can create a string of any kind, right? And honestly, haven't looked at it, right?
Yeah, but creating a query for Elasticsearch is just basically creating something like the GraphQL query, send it to Elastic, and then it returns the result.
That was as far as we got. Like I say, it was not. We didn't.
I think
throw it out there.
Yeah, I think it's like an SQL type, essentially.
So, given that, from what I understood, the GLQL already has a parser and stuff like that creates the GraphQL. Basically, we would just take the abstract, the AST from GLQL and transcode it to whatever we want.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of the way this is broken up, right? So there's a parser that sucks in the definition. Then there's some amount of optimization with creating the AST, then some amount of optimization with it. Then quote unquote a code generator that spits out whatever. Right now it spits out GraphQL. Right. So right now what I'm going to do is change it so that it puts out effectively. Oh, is my screen showing?
Yep.
Okay. So effectively, I'm going to be putting out this. Right, which is the variables that get handed back to the back end that we can combine with a static GraphQL file that will hopefully give us a query.
Awesome, cool.
Okay, so that's why. So we're not this monster file as it starts to grow. and what I've been playing with is the whole fragment thing, right? So that we can start breaking the QL or the GraphQL query into all these fragments so that we can then, hopefully reduce the amount of redundant or copy paste kind of call it copy paste programming, right? And that's honestly, I started this yesterday afternoon my time, or a little bit yesterday morning, yesterday afternoon my time, and it's 5 o'clock in the morning my time. So I haven't done much, but I got to a certain point and you guys presented an opportunity for me to talk about it. And I'm fighting with GraphQL because I get it. It's a query language. It has a syntax,
Hmm.
But because it's also very extendable, I got into our schema or GitLab schema where they've modified it to add things, or not the query language, but it's just like working in XML. XML is a very low level definition, and then you can do anything with it.
Yeah. Yep.
You
Yep.
go
Yep.
all over the place, right? So, I've been, using this and fighting with the syntax errors and the things that the Explorer is giving me. But just to kind of give you a sense of it, or where I'm trying to go with it, right? So at this level, right? To your point, Lee, where you were just talking about it, right? So if this is
Yep.
a group, and never mind this huge list of things that's only going to get longer, but if this is a group, we include this. If it's a, sorry, if it is a, I can say this right. If it isn't a group, so we're skipping if it is a group.
Yes.
So if it's a project, we include the project include fragment. If it is a group, we include the group include fragment. And
Hmm.
then we go up to these two. And, I'm still running into issues with the whole, I don't know, like if I look at this, let me open this up again. Okay, so I have this thing called, they're the same. They basically both include this work item assignee. Well, that doesn't work because the work item assignee has to be on project. So I'm going to need a work item assignee for group as well. Just the way the hierarchy works, it's fighting me all the way. I can't have a common fragment because the way the fragments, well, maybe I can, right? I'm still
Yeah, I
learning.
think you might be able to just remove, if the structure is the same, I think you can just remove the on project bit, but I might be wrong there. So you wouldn't remove it from that one, couldn't put that one back in, but where you've got the work ith on line 53, I think if that is exactly the same syntactically regardless, then I think you can just remove the on project from that.
I keep clicking on the wrong thing here. I want to select it or at least put my cursor there. Okay, so you're saying that I should be able to do that. Well, maybe, but
I thought you could, but it doesn't look like you can.
No,
I wonder if,
doesn't
let me see
know.
if there's a way of defining on X or Y, perhaps. Let me have a look.
Try to use namespace instead of project.
Mm.
you mean as in if I
No,
have something defined as a variable called namespace or
no, on line 53, instead of using on project, try on namespace because I don't know what's the state, but basically groups and project are going to become one thing, so you won't have this division. And the common denominator should be the namespace, but probably they didn't expose work item on namespace.
I mean again, I'm part of the challenge I have. I mean, I really feel like I'm, literally try this, that doesn't work. Try that, this doesn't work. I'm trying to find, so I've been looking at some examples from here, which is in the GitLab repository, which is where they've got this is sort of on the back end where they've got a bunch of fragments,
Yeah,
call it a very big pool of examples to look at things here,
pretty
right? So I
much.
can look at lots of other examples that presumably work. So I've been using that. And then I've been trying to look at, you know, basically the spec for GraphQL itself that says
Mhm.
this is how GraphQL is supposed to work. Because again, it's a learning experience as much as anything. And I know a lot more than I knew this time yesterday, but I know enough to know what I don't know. Uh, you know, in that sense. The other thought that I don't have a specific question here, right? It's just any ideas you have are always good. But here I ran into an interesting one yesterday, and I'll show you this. I got to figure out how to change what I'm sharing here. Well, it doesn't change it. Okay, because I'm sharing that. I want to share my editor for a second. Let's go see here. Discord. That one. Okay.
It is funny
So
because
let's.
I learn new things about GraphQL all the time as well. So
So one of the things I tried. So I just put a created a directory with GraphQL stuff and stuck it in a branch so I could share it and presumably Manchu or anybody else can look at it because it's now in the repository. Just as a way to touch bases between this. So I've got the thing I just showed you in the Graph Explorer is effectively this file here, and I stole because this is obviously machine generated the schema that we're
Yeah.
using for GitLab, right? With the idea that I could use this and use the editor to help me as an alternative to editing
Yeah.
in the GraphQL Explorer. Well, one of the things I ran into, and maybe it's a trivial thing, but when I tried to check it in, or when I tried to push it to GitLab, I got this error saying that I have a to do and I got to fix it. Well, the to do is actually part of the schema. All right. So it's one of those frustrating little things because I was just trying to finish my day and push everything over to the server so that if anybody, because this is off on a branch, right? So I wanted to push it to the server, and it's like I get caught by this pre-hook thing that's basically saying you have a to do. You can't push it to the server, and it's like so I basically ignored the file and pushed it anyway. So I didn't. I mean, I don't need to share that file. It doesn't matter. It just was one of those annoying things that's like, this to do is legit. This is actually the macro or whatever the hell they call it in the schema language that they're using uh,
Yeah.
to define current user to dos, because we have a thing called a to do in the product, and the tool is fighting us. Anyway, I just not that it
That
was.
that's definitely calling for a git push, no verify, and for someone to add this exclusion somewhere.
Yeah, well, all I did for now was I basically added to git ignore so it doesn't get pushed, because, like I said, this is a generated schema, and arguably you regenerate it, you don't push it. But it was just one of those, oh shit, more things to run. Anyway, so I don't know if you guys got any kind of documentation clues, ideas of how to edit, improve, work with GraphQL where it helps. Any links you got or anything would be appreciated, just to give me more reading material, because even though I kind of get it, I'm stuck with the whole programming metaphor rather than query language metaphor. So I continually think things that don't necessarily work. Uh, I mean, I figure it out. It tells me it doesn't work, and I spend another hour or whatever going in a circle. So, and presumably I'll get better at it as I go. But
Hmm.
oh, that might
Try to
help. I'll try that one too.
experiment, um, but not no such luck. I'll show you. So I just used the like Duo chat to suggest how I might be able to apply like a fragment on multiple types, and it sort of suggested that I could create like almost this custom type,
Ooh.
which is this or this, but computer says no. I'd have to Google a little bit more to see why computer says no, and then I said, okay, that doesn't work. What else? And it also suggested this, so to create like an interface, which again, and then tell it that different types implement that interface, but that returns exactly the same. So I'd be interested to dig a little bit more at some point to see. But what Marco says is really interesting, and it does actually, yeah, make you think. Well, actually, if they do implement the same thing, then that should definitely be done in the back end. So if we go back to
I'm
so
actually
we've got your
I'm looking at the project type, a group type, and namespace type, and how those are exposed to GraphQL. And both project type and group type have the work items property,
yeah.
and that's missing from namespace. I wonder if, let me see, is it using the same resolver? Resolver works item resolver namespaces. It could also be using the same resolver. So maybe we could consolidate that down to the namespace type. And you wouldn't have to do, if a project do this, if a group do that.
So yeah, so this is a bit of a demonstration of how both a group and a project. So this bit on the left is just an alias. Like I don't actually need that other than for the fact that I'm returning two of the same thing. So I need to give them an alias so it can represent that in some way. But namespace is clever and it sort of says, oh, well, this is actually a project. And therefore it returns the project, whereas this is actually a group and it returns the group. The problem is, as Marco was saying there, that so okay, so we can do work item,
It's using two different resolvers.
but at the same time, like that should still work because I presume we've got an IID. Giving me so complete here.
Huh. I know it's using the same. They're derived one from the other.
Okay, so work item is available, which makes sense. Sorry, work ID is that, yeah. So, but then ours is a search, isn't it? Generally, we're not returning one. So, and work items isn't available on namespace at the moment, but there's no reason why it shouldn't be, right?
Yeah, especially because I had a look at the resolvers used on the project type and on the group type.
Yeah.
And there, let me see. So the project, the resolver used on the project is the base class for the resolver used for the group. So
one extends the other, essentially.
Yes. So I guess I'm not completely sure, but we could try to consolidate all into one resolver and use it on the namespace type, because then the group type extends the namespace type and the project type.
So I'm fairly confident that we do this when we're selecting a single work item now from the front end, from the UI, because what we used to do was a bit horrible. And we had, in all of our front end view components, we basically had conditional logic that said if it was a group, use this query. If it's a project, use this query. And we did away with that. Because there's now I think it's work item.
Yeah, because epics and issues are both work items, and epics are at group level and issues are
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so work item is available generically, and I think, although I can't remember what the criteria and arguments in here somewhere, or do you get arguments?
The thing is that the project type on GraphQL still doesn't extend the namespace type.
So, if that was fit, yeah. Oh, okay. So it just takes ID, I think, at the moment, but that can be either an ID of like you say, it can be a
It's almost like you want to go over all of that definition and make it more orthogonal, right? I mean, it's orthogonality that you're fighting with, right? Is like, why is this one different than this one when they do the same thing, right? So you want to be able to flow in an orthogonal way so everything's not exceptions.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm saying it right. It's, you know.
I tell you what we might be able to do. Yeah, maybe we're doing the complexity at the wrong level there, because like I don't think we're or are we? I was going to say, like, there's there clearly are some differences between a project and a group. But if it's, for example, the work items underneath, then we know that they're the same. So maybe we'd still have, and I don't know how far I can go back here.
A group is really just a plurality, right? I mean, it has the same things, but there's multiple, it's the add the S. To a large extent.
So,
I mean, there's exceptions to that, obviously, but it's
There's also, for example, a project can have a repository attached to it, whilst a group
right.
doesn't. There's different features
Right,
for
right, but
that.
there's an extension where you're extending the idea when you get into a particular project where you have extra things, adding things,
Yeah, pretty much.
yeah, I think we saw a minute ago an interface, didn't we? I think it was on one. So I think if we used an interface instead, then that would just work. But yeah, interesting. I still
to me the code side of it, you're changing the Rust to generate the variables and all that stuff. That's the easy part. I know how to do that, right? The hard part is figuring out how to tweak it in a way that keeps. The hard part for me is figuring out how to tweak it, the GraphQL, in a way that keeps it happy syntactically, does what I want, and not do what you did, where you basically define a query that's a valid query, but the backend doesn't like it. Like where you're getting some kind of invariant answers from the thing that says you can't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll ask internally to see if anyone knows if that's. My guess is there is an interface, right? So if we go back to now, was there a work items or not? The fact that when I hover over it, it doesn't do anything suggests there isn't, but there must be work items, right? Why am I not finding that?
That sounds like me yesterday trying to figure this stuff out. It's like, why doesn't that work that way? And you know a lot more about how it's supposed to work than I do. So it's like, I feel like I was just playing a game called Whack-A-Mole. And you just push on this bug.
Because I'm on namespace still. Okay. Let's go back to this. Okay.
You know what? I was having a look at the issues list view component, and the list does the include if his project, or basically the same thing that Rick was doing in GraphQL. The detail for a specific work item. So when you go to an issue detail page, that I think you're using the query on the namespace, because you have the IAID of the specific work item. So you're pinpointing it instead of querying the whole list, which you need to do if group do this, if project do that, because they're still not consolidated into the namespace level.
Oh, so okay, so I definitely shouldn't have done that because that's going to return lots of stuff. But okay, so that's a step in the right direction. But we want one level up than that, really, don't we? So project. So it has got a project. So I think that's all we'd have to do. Extract all the commonalities between project and group into an interface. So you can see like project already implements project interface into doable. But if we move like all of the common builds from.
Are you thinking that you're sharing your screen?
Yes, I am. Sorry, this was my eureka. So I moved the fragment to be on the connection rather than, and then like at least all my, but what I was then looking at, I was like, well, okay, so project implements these interfaces. So like if we I don't know how quickly I'm gonna risk it, but probably expecting it to explode. So let me just
You want to create a new interface, called it work itemable, and make both.
exactly. So in you have to
You
forgive me.
know
I'm not
the
sure.
backend pain to move all of that.
I don't think it's as bad as you think, but maybe. So um so forgive me, I can't easily share my VS Code at the same time. So to do I'm copying the to doable interface.
But honestly, given that it already works if you create a fragment for work items, like you did on your example, is it
Mhm.
really
Yeah,
necessary
the
to?
problem is you've got lots of arguments for the so you want to be able to put a load of arguments in here, and you
Oh, and
can't do that with the fragment. Whereas if we abstract it a layer up, then we will be able to do that. So let me just rename my work item bubble interface. Um,
you need to move also the work items field to that interface.
yes,
And
almost
that
there.
the issue is that you have two different resolvers, one for project and one for.
Okay. But I could dynamically, you could use the right one depending on the object parent, I guess. Um,
I guess you can, or you can override the method on the two actual types.
yeah. Um, it's there, but I think it's good. Almost certainly. Right. So if I try. Oh, it's a good start, isn't it? Itemable, uninitialized constant. I made a typo. Oh, it's capital I. But work item is one word. No, it isn't. It's two words. So it should be I underscore.
It's funny how in English you just add the able suffix to make something do something.
Yeah, I'm not sure quite how valid syntactically or whatever you want to call it that is, but hey, why not?
English is sort of the garbage collector language. You can add anything, do anything, make any words.
Quite sure what it doesn't like. Expected name.
Yeah, line 11 on the query, remove the parentheses.
Oh, sorry, thank you. I was thinking that was to do with the change that I've made. I mean, clearly I'm still running the old query, but this is just checking if it compiles. So hopefully now it will recognize
Nope.
like it. Um, Oh, because it's work itemable interface. Where's it picking it up from now? It doesn't exist anymore. Oh, I've done it in group type, but not in project type. Come on. Right, and that's what you were saying because it works in one but not in the other. How easily you can put something. Going to remove the resolver for a moment. Is that going to make it explode? Yeah, but what I was hoping I could at least demonstrate is that now, no, it's not compiling, so it's not giving me to complete.
What if?
But like it's just because they're two different resolvers. But I think you could put the logic in the interface to tell it which.
Yeah, either that or declare the field on the interface and override the method to get the resolver on the two real types.
Right. Oh yeah, so we could actually yeah, I don't know how it works if you have a conflict of so let me try having it on
Because
the base type.
I know that you can define the field, and by default it's going to search the type for a method with the same name. Hmm.
This is the fun error that means you've screwed it up, isn't it?
Never saw that one.
Oh, I get that all the time when I'm playing with GraphQL. If you get like an extra comma in somewhere or anything, I think what it's complaining about is that the field exists in like the base class and in the interface. Because it's that weird DSL, it's annoying that you can't just like wrap an if around a field, if you know what I mean. But because, like you say, the resolvers are different, it's not gonna. It's still not gonna. Yeah, you'd need the resolver would need an interface almost as well that kind of matches.
Well, technically speaking, you don't need the interface because they're one derived from the other.
Oh, which one did you say resolvers work items resolver is the sort of whatever you want to call it one?
Let me check. So the resolver declared in namespaces work items resolver is deriving from work items resolver declared on the resolvers module. So resolvers work items resolver should be the base class. That goes well for both.
Okay.
In theory.
Oh.
Feel
So
no.
it wouldn't be nodes anymore. It would now be work items. Awesome. I think we're in business.
Yep. Probably yes. Just need to figure out how to call the other resolver when needed, but it's looking promising.
Nice.
Yay.
So let me just switch what I'm sharing so you can see what I hacked quickly. All about the hacking to get it working right. So essentially, the work itemable interface just implements the one work item field, but obviously anything that's that I think it makes most sense. And I think this is what you were alluding to in the first place, Marco, right? We've already got a namespace type.
Yeah.
And really anything that's available on both projects and groups should be in here.
Yeah.
So that's everything from.
Yeah, the main issue with that is that the group type really is derived from namespace type because they're the same thing. Project, however, is not yet at least.
Yeah, will it ever be? But so I created this. This is what you were saying, Marco, is the base resolver for the project. Sorry, the base resolver for the group resolver. Anyway, so they share a lot in common. So I've just got the one work items on here, and then yeah, I just removed the work items field from both the group type and the project type, and instead added the interface. And then that becomes available
To both.
I still don't quite understand why when I hover over it doesn't.
I wonder, can you try to search if there's already a field? Because when you declare a field, it's going to search for example, the organization edit path method or property on the object. But you can, for example, on the group type that I'm seeing on VS Code, for example, web URL.
So in here, you mean? Or
I'm still looking at VS Code.
oh, of course, yeah. Sorry.
I know I was perfectly fine with VS Code.
But what are you saying? Oh, you want me to move web URL from?
No, I was trying to brainstorm one thing. So on the GraphQL type, for example, the web URL field is going to look for the web URL property on the group or project object, Ruby object, not GraphQL object.
Right.
But
You mean in here or in here? Right? That's what I'm not quite following what you're.
Go back to VS Code. So in here, yeah. So basically, the GraphQL type is just a wrapper on top of the Ruby object. Let's put it.
Yes.
So the web URL field is going to look by default for the web URL property on the
Correct.
Ruby object. But you can declare a method called web URL here on the group type to define a custom logic on how that field is going to get computed. For example, you can have computed fields. I
Yeah.
wonder if there's an example of somewhere that we already defined the field and we declare the resolver
Dynamically.
on the exactly, because if we can do that, we just need to declare the field on the work itemable interface and then override the method on the true types.
So I'm going to say that that's not going to help us, because if it's using a different resolver, then it won't allow us. Yeah. So the whole point is we need an interface. Like, so it's fine if let me try and think of an example. So let's say I can't see any reason why you would be able to filter work items differently based on whether they're in a group or in a project. I suppose if it's in a project, it makes no sense to filter based on the project because you already know which project, right? Whereas when you're in a group, you might want to do work item
Yeah, but
project blah.
at that point, if you provide a project different from the actual project that you're already using on as an argument, it should simply return an empty response.
But
And then,
all I'm trying to do is give an example of, like, let's say there
yeah,
genuinely is at least one thing, one argument that you might want to use when pulling work items for projects that you don't want for groups or vice versa. I think that's perfectly fine and acceptable. All I think you'd need to do is so we've got our two resolvers. You can still see my VS Code, which is great. So we can look at our work item.
honestly,
What's it?
I'm looking at the derived work items resolver for the group, and it's only adding three arguments, which is include ancestors, include descendants, and exclude projects. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't really see why we couldn't handle that on the base resolver and only have one. Simply, if those arguments don't make sense for the type that you're querying, simply skip them.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my brain. So the only reason you can't, presume you can't, yeah. So the only reason is because the front end doesn't understand that the two resolvers have they inherit or extend the same base resolver, right? The front end just doesn't understand that. And the way
Yeah.
to make it understand that, I presume, is by having an interface. Is that right?
Yeah, but I honestly don't see why we cannot move everything into one resolver and only evaluate the
Well, I
arguments.
think extension makes sense as a concept, if you know what I mean. And I don't. This doesn't seem like the right reason to combine them into a single result. Like, do you know what I mean? We're kind of saying, oh, let's horseshoe it into a single resolver just so this works.
Yeah, but it's not just to make this work. Because if we do this, we abstract away all the differences between groups and project that the front end has to deal with. If you create a query and prepare the arguments, then it's the backend that has to decide what to do. And you can do it there because you know what object you have. But this way, it would also simplify the issues list and GLQL, for example, because you have one resolver. You're querying for work items. If I query for work items on a project entity and I try to filter by exclude projects, it doesn't make sense. But it's the backend that handles that.
Yeah, to me that doesn't feel right. I feel like I think it makes sense that we're extending a base resolver and only adding the arguments when it makes sense. I think this is a slightly different, do you know what I mean? Like problem that I'm
Yeah,
just
but
trying in my head to figure out if we can solve, which I think we
yeah,
can, but go on.
but doing so, you create this split between the resolver on the type that you have to handle that on the GraphQL query, so basically on the front end. And you have to have
Well,
two.
that's what I'm trying to figure out in my head. How can we
You technically don't need to create an interface because you already have the base type. That's the interface, but you're adding stuff because that stuff is needed.
well, no, because the challenge is we need both of these to have the same. So we need both project and type to implement the same field with the same signature, let's say.
Which you have now because you have a work
which I
item.
have now, but if we make this dynamic, it no longer is, right? Because it would actually return a different resolver.
That's what I mean. If we want to unify, we have to have one resolver.
But I'm trying to get my head around of like when you extend a class, right? You got your, I don't know, animal class, and you've got your cat and dog class, which both extend animal. Then
Yes.
things understand that they both implement animal, right? And therefore you can use dog or cat anywhere that you can use animal. And
Yes,
that's what
but
I'm just trying to.
if I have something that has to work for both, I declare it on the animal class. If I have something
Exactly.
specific,
Right.
I declare it on the specific class, so cat or dog. But if I want to
Yeah.
call that specific method, I have to cast the base object to the specific object because I don't know that the base object has that method.
So
Yeah.
is there, I'm still hung up a little bit on the idea that a group is nothing but a container for projects. Rather than you're looking at it as a base functionality and then have two different derived classes, if you want to use that terminology, right? One is projects, one is groups. What if you just have just have projects with most of the attributes, and then a group is nothing but a container of them. And then you can have some container specific stuff like exclude, include, whatever, filtering kind of capabilities you need. So instead of having a common base class, the common base class is projects. And then a container of projects is called groups.
It's not really that because a project has features that groups don't have and vice versa. So
Well,
minimum
indirectly, a
common
group has
denominator.
anything the project has, right? But anyway, I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing out, I play
I
devil's
don't.
advocate, right?
Yeah, I don't really think that you can do that, and that's why they started creating the namespace because the namespace has both has the things that are in common between project and groups, and that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And then
But
they both
project,
derive from it. Okay.
yeah, because there are features like well, the main feature that comes to mind is the ability to have a repository attached to a group that you cannot do it on a group on attached to a
But
project
if I
that you
wanted to
can do.
query a group for a list of repositories, I could do that because the group would contain a list of repositories indirectly through the projects, right?
Yes,
So
but it can't contain it directly.
yeah, and this is where it gets quite interesting because querying a group for a list of work items is very different to querying a group for its projects and their work items. Like you have to do, although I suppose it's kind of doing the same thing under the hood, but from a pagination point of view alone, like from from a GraphQL, I don't know what you want to call it, but yeah. So if I go back to the GraphQL quickly, if I was to
I mean,
say
we are kind of jumping around here between how it currently works versus how it could work, right?
no, don't think we are. This is how GraphQL, like in its very nature. So let me show you what I mean. So if we do work items here, then we're basically going to get 100 work items. If we do projects, nodes, and then this in here, then we're going to get 100 projects, and for each of those projects, 100 work items. So I think that's the difference between, like, when you ask for a namespace, it's almost amalgamating all of the projects. Well, it's not, but if you ask for work items in a namespace or a group, it's getting rid of these layers. I don't know what you would actually call this. It's I guess recursion, or like it flattens it is the
That's
main
why
thing.
that's why the work items resolver on the group can basically has the two additional arguments for include descendants and ancestors, because you can only get the work items declared on that specific group, or on that group and the project or
Yeah,
subgroup and stuff like that.
but I'm still trying to battle with in my head is trying to understand if GraphQL could understand, or what we'd have to do to make it understand that. What do I even mean? I want to share Visual Studio Code. Yeah. I want it to understand, like what we were saying before. If we made this dynamic, and I don't quite know, let's just say object dot, I don't know, parent dot is a project, then that else. I guess I'm interested first of all if that's even legit. It's probably complete nonsense. I'll try and reload and see if I know you can't see my browser, but see if my browser explains. So in this scenario, so both our project type and our group type implement that says undefined local variable method object. Quite understand. So what Marco had suggested is we have a look to see whether there are any examples of us actually doing kind of conditional resolver.
Yeah, I'm not really sure we are going to find one. Oh, resolver
Yes,
method.
resolver method. Why would it be a bool though?
Because it's returning the value. So it's like not actually declaring what resolver to use. It's telling it how to compute the value of the field.
Huh? What?
When you query for cross-project pipeline available, it's going to call
Yeah.
that method and return the value. It's not really using a resolver.
Okay. But then I thought when you did that, you just did method.
Probably legacy code.
Yeah, because it always seems to be returning a ball, which to me this is actually, yeah, how it's the data rather than the yeah. Yeah, they're always balls. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, because objects, I don't quite remember. It's,
I think this is not really valid because when you tell it the resolver, you tell it the type of the resolver. So given the type, it's going to get the list of arguments to dynamically create the schema. If you give it a method, you don't really know what resolver to use.
yeah,
I'm actually not even sure that we can do this.
yeah. So it needs to know at compile time rather than at runtime, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Um, Interesting. I'll ask though, because I'm really interested to know if we can, because what I kind of want here is to basically say that the resolvers are different, but they both extend this, which I'd hope that it would kind of know, if that makes sense. But um, okay, how about this, Marco? It kind of goes back to your idea where you were saying, well, just combine the resolvers. Well,
Yeah.
yes and no. What if we just combine the resolvers, but we don't? We have a combined resolver that then calls the relevant resolver, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but you would still have to declare the arguments on that combined resolver. So it would just be like, I'm exposing to you all these arguments, but not all of them are always true, usable.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So
So basically, it would be the same as combining them all into one resolver.
yeah, because it needs to know. We'll ask the question. Actually, let me just quickly. So, what we're using, GraphQL Ruby, is that's the client, though, isn't it, or not? What's the server component called?
That's a good question.
Um, can I create a resolver interface? Is what we're essentially saying.
I have to go for a second. I'll be right back.
Cool. Yeah, I'm even struggling to like think how we phrase the question. So if we give it this interface, say, looking at Ruby define system think I've worded that right.
I'm back.
I'm trying to ask AI, but first I had to figure out the question I was trying to ask. So I've basically said, this is our interface. Is it possible to use an interface to define consistent arguments for the work items resolver, but use a different resolver depending on the parent, which might have additional arguments? So I'm basically saying multiple resolvers that have the same interface, but also, some other stuff. And it's saying, so items.
Uh-huh. So it's redeclaring the field.
But then because it doesn't just define a resolver here, but it does here and here. Okay, this is interesting. So when I tried to...
Oh, that's...
Oh.
So I wonder if instead of doing a do and, you can import a module.
Yeah, well but I'm more wondering, because what I couldn't get to work was I couldn't define the field on the interface and define it again. I think that was basically breaking when I tried to do that. So if I basically took this...
Yeah, well,
Well,
basically, we are still assuming that the answer is correct.
True, yeah.
The AI is not hallucinating. Yeah.
Work items on yeah, no, you can't see my browser at the moment. But yeah, then I'm going to run in a second, but I'm just going to try this again just to see if I inadvertently fixed it at some point. Well, it hasn't immediately. Let me share my browser screen. Didn't immediately crap itself, but so work item of also. Sure, this will be where it says that. Is it invariant or explodes catastrophically?
What?
What?
Is it working?
I think it might be. So how can I tell that it's actually doing what
I think that you could, instead of using the fragment, try to query work items on project and on group and see if you have the additional arguments.
Yeah, so you mean work item. And this one shouldn't have something about include descendants.
Yeah.
This one.
What?
Awesome. There you go. There's your answer.
Okay, so, okay. This is pretty much what the idea we started with. So basically declaring the base thing and then on the specific type, tell it what resolver to use.
Yeah, exactly.
That's nice.
Yeah, I think so. But basically moving stuff into so, and my theory is like, well, no, I suppose it is only work items you're interested. Well, no, you're not, are you? Because you're interested in potentially merge requests or issues as well. So,
but those are not work items. So
no, merge requests aren't. So like if you wanted, you could have an interface that basically, but yeah. But at the same time, like you said before, like there's no point in really even using an interface. We could just define this on namespace. because
Yes.
both work items,
No,
issues, and merge requests should always be
no.
available.
Yes, but you cannot do it on the namespace type because the project type doesn't extend the namespace type yet.
Oh, okay.
So the interface is the only way, but
Okay.
still, technically speaking, you could push these changes and the existing tests should still pass because the interfaces and the name of the field hasn't changed.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Does that sort of make sense? What we've gone round about the houses and tried lots of stuff and bounced around lots of ideas, Rick. But does that kind of make sense? What we've ended up with
Yes. I mean, I
there?
understand. I know. I don't know. I understand what you're doing. I get that. Uh, and and
That's
and I think it's a good idea. You know, it's effectively refactoring so that your resolver behavior becomes more dynamic, which makes sense from the Ruby side of it to do all of that, and it will make it. I'll say future tense. It will make it easier to do what I'm trying to do because of that. It makes it, you know, I don't have to have as much copy and paste code to handle all the exceptions kind of thing in terms of the static
Yeah,
query, right?
yeah.
So no, it makes sense. I'm glad the discussion occurred. I'm not sure. It depends upon, are you going to take that now and make an issue and a change or an MR out of it, or how do we do that?
I wouldn't I don't have really capacity to do that, but I'm more than happy to support if this is something like so. Like, yeah, I think if you're prepared to create the issue, I can help you flesh it out. Marco can help you flesh it out. We can make sure the relevant product team or teams are happy with the approach. And
Okay. I
then
mean, it's just,
certainly,
I mean, it's really going off of my expertise or my comfort level when we get into the Ruby stuff. I mean, I can read what you're doing. I can review what you're saying and agree that it makes sense. But you know, I can barely
so
spell Ruby, never mind go make changes to it kind of thing. I mean, that's my
yeah.
concern. I mean, do I like it? Yes. Does it make sense? Yes. Am I the guy to do it? I could put it on the
I
list.
mean, if
Or I work
Marco's
around it with the
no,
stuff
no,
I'm trying
no.
to do right now.
If Marco's prepared to commit a little bit like me, I like I say, I haven't got loads of time, but I think the actual code side of things would be reasonably straightforward. I'm reasonably comfortable based on what we've proved there. So if you're prepared to do a bit of prodding and maybe do the issue and like get the conversation rolling, if we get the thumbs up, then I'm prepared to commit
Okay.
to the code side of things with a
Yeah,
bit
I
of
can.
help
Okay.
from Marco.
Yeah, I can also. I can join you on this journey.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, so
So
yeah, if
where
it,
would the issue go? I'll go, I can go start an issue and we'll see
so
what
I
we need
think
to
just
edit,
in the
add to it.
main, I think
In
in
the
the
main,
main, yeah, main
okay.
GitLab repo, and essentially it's about figuring out what you think is the stuff we should extract to this interface,
Okay.
and the kind of use cases, yeah, to make it a hell of a lot easier on the consuming end, if that's the term that we would use. And yes, GLQL is a perfect example of that, but it could be anyone writing any interface or whatever you want to call it to consume the GraphQL API.
Yeah, I
Okay.
would try to also have a look at how the I don't know the issues list, but probably not because you still need to do the answer stores, include the answer stores and stuff like that. So that should still require the different code path on the GraphQL query.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay, cool.
I think the argument for it is it creates the basis, you know, the starting point to go forward with making this as a way to grow it and extend it that way, right? You know, sort of the dynamic resolver side of it. And then as we, you know, apply it to other things, whether it ever gets applied to issues in MRs, because that's more legacy now, it may not happen, but at least the discussion can occur, and we can start with work items, and then as we drill down, we may find there's other things that need to, or as you drill down,
Yeah.
as somebody drills down, there may be other things that need to be the same idea applied to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I will put some text together, and I'll probably send it to you, DM it in Discord first, just if the text make sure I'm using the right words, because again, it's not my familiarity. And then I'll go create the issue with it once we're good, and then you guys can jump on and
Awesome.
add things.
make it happen. No, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, appreciate that. I think in my head I am slightly thinking how, like, naming is always hard, as we know, and like saying, oh, we'll start with just work items is great, but then we might call it work itemable or something. But then obviously if we do then want to add merge requests, add issues, add, I don't know, some other vulnerabilities, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
then what do we call it so it's extensible? But that's a problem for a little bit further down the line. But yeah, awesome.
But if it becomes the model to use in other places, then you say, hey, just like we did here, do this for that. Or, like, and then there's, like you just did, you look for other places where it's done and you try to do it the same way. So
Yes.
we want to create the example and use work items as a good basis
Cool.
to start. Okay. Let me put some words together, and I'll, like I say, I'll send it to you in Discord. And if
Perfect.
you're happy, I'll go create an issue with it.
Sounds good. Awesome. Well,
Welcome.
enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
I'm going to go find breakfast.